I was never part of the military, never wanted to be. I never wanted to go across seas to foreign lands and fight on foreign soil. And I would if I had to, but I don't want to. And you know, the reason that I'm safe and I'm free and my kids are safe and they're free and my wife and all my family members, my friends, why we can live the way we live in this free country is a direct result of those people who did go to the military, did go overseas, did fight on foreign ground, did go into battles not knowing what's going to happen, and did suffer horrific things that happened to them and the people that they went there with. And I am forever grateful to those people. And that's why when they came to me and asked me to be part of this event, that I volunteered graciously. Jumped in the truck and ran down there. I really appreciate what you guys have done for me, basically my family, my country, my freedom. So that's why I'm here. Really got a place in my heart for you guys. So what I'm going to do is kind of go over how I look at a piece of property in this terrain, and I welcome all questions because that's kind of how I drive. You know, I can answer anything kind of off the cuff, and I probably do better with the questions than I do actually teaching. I'm not a great teacher, you know, but questions-wise, that drives me real well. So I look at a property like this and hill country, and basically the deer are going to concentrate on terrain. And a lot of guys do real well just by hunting terrain without even any deer sign. A combination of two is always great, right? But deer, basically, as they get older, they start to learn how to bed. You see younger ones kind of bed randomly. They'll kind of use the terrain, they kind of won't. And as they get age, they either die or they learn, right? So they kind of use wind and they use terrain to their advantage. And when they get to be in that age range that we're all looking for, they really get it down kind of well on how they bed. So if you think about these deer and being 5-6 years old and trained like this, I mean, most of you walk through this place, right? There's cameras everywhere. There's hunters everywhere. How does a deer get to be 5 or 6 and not die? They find the niches where people don't go. In some cases, it's the stuff where you can't hunt. In some cases, it's they just find some niche. So what you really got to kind of look for is that overlooked spots. I mean, like me and Eric were onto a deer. We got some tips from a guy we ran into yesterday, and he showed us some trail cam pics. There's a bunch of people in that area hunting this deer because they're getting trail cam pics of it. And we found his sign was fresh and stuff. And well, we ended up looking at that and saying, people are hunting everywhere in here. And we figured out that the deer was right against the road. So we got the scrape right there, cell cam right there. Here's another rub, historical rubs. So buck is obviously coming in and out like this. So I think we just keep going. Go right back there and find where he's coming from. Yeah. Lead the way. This one's yours.
We worked our way in off of all those rubs and scrapes right on the edge up there, and I had this hunch that it was in line with this hub that we're in, and this just looked like a really overlooked spot. So what we did is just kind of follow that sign back in here. We took the relief trail around a draw, and we just kind of jumped up on a finger here. We have acorns dropping behind us like crazy with fresh caps, all eaten very clearly. Leaves are all disturbed. I mean, you can see all the deer have been in there. And there's this nice little flat up here that looks to have some oaks too. I actually just heard one drop. I'm not gonna push up any further because this is where I'm gonna wanna set up. But on the other side of this, there's all leeward bedding in this thermal hub. And I haven't seen sign of many people at all whatsoever in here. I mean, we're right off the road. There's some nice trails coming through here.
And that sign that we saw over there by the camera, it all leads from this direction. Mm-hmm. So I just think that this is a good area. And you know, the road goes through like this, and then there's a road that comes in here like this, and we pull up the gate to hunt here. Everybody gets out and just walks that road back,
And then they see the sign, and they just assume everything's coming from further back.
Yeah, I mean, we literally parked and walked in a couple hundred yards. That's all it is.
Yeah. I mean, it would be epic to shoot one right here. You drag it 50 feet to throw it in your truck.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this really looks like...
It's the classic overlooked spot.
Mm-hmm. And it really looks deery.
I mean, it'd be nice to see some big rubs, but I don't think you need them.
No.
The rubs are right over there.
One big rub would have been nice to confirm this is exactly where he's coming from.
Yeah, you might see a big scrape or rub up on top, too. But you just got to figure out how to read this for wind and thermals, and I think this flat, everything that's going back there is going to end up on this flat somewhere. Probably coming from right over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another road right up here too. This is surrounded by roads in here.
Yep.
I think a lot of people would think that, they just don't look at it, or it gets too pressured kind of thing.
People got a mindset of what they think a deer should do and where it should be.
Yeah.
And they
you got to get way away from the roads.
Yep.
Right? This is the rule for everybody.
What we looked at when Eric started thinking over here is we were talking to that Dylan guy, and he told us about where he has hunted, where he has looked back here, and how he's trying to kill a certain buck. And we're looking at it, and we're like, well, what didn't you guys hit? And they hit basically everything. These people are going up and down every ridge, every thermal hub, and they got cameras in all of them, and they're just getting night pictures. Where somewhere that deer is here in daylight.
Yep.
So what we're doing is we're looking, where could he be? And Eric said right away, he goes, oh, there's some good terrain right here next to the road where nobody goes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, to me, that stuff's obvious, but to other people, it's not.
Right.
And that's what you got to do, is you got to get out of that mindset of thinking like, where should a deer be? Because everybody else is thinking like that. And Dylan and the people he knows that are out here confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you can come onto a new piece of property and say, where would I go hit first? And you can almost automatically just eliminate that and start thinking outside of the box. So I'm sitting on this little point here. I'm gonna make out this little point, and there's a big draw in front of me. And just past that draw is the leeward side. We've got a wind like this. That would be the leeward side where all that bedding would be that I would expect. Now there is another road that kind of runs down that point. So it's right off of the road. I mean, 3 different ways. I got a road this way, I got a road that way, and I got a road this way. But these roads don't carry too much traffic. So you got a wind like this coming out of the north. And I would expect that those bucks would either drop down into this hub. This is a big thermal hub. There's all this leeward bedding here. There's a nice point out there. There's a point here. There's a big draw behind me. There's a couple points out here that are non-leeward. But what I would expect is for those bucks to either drop down into that hub and go straight up, or to run a relief trail in this draw here and come out into this flat.
We went and hunted it, but it was too late. Those guys had too much pressure, I believe. But I bet you if we were there a day or two earlier, when that sign was laid down, before all those guys saw it, that had their trail cameras out there, before they went in there and dropped more cameras, I bet you we would have probably saw it. Whether we went out, we were shot, is a different story. But it's really finding that niche. Everybody has a thing in their head where they think a deer is supposed to do a certain thing or live a certain way. And they go out in the woods with that mindset. And it kind of puts everybody in the same areas. And I believe that those deer that are 5 or 6 years old, they don't live in that mindset that we all have, because otherwise they die. You don't go out there during rut and take a walk around. You can't walk 5 minutes and you walk underneath somebody who's going, what the hell are you doing? I'm out here hunting. Well, deer can't either, a big buck. So they find a way to get through there without running into people. And that's just a fact, because if they run in daylight all over the place, they die. They get shot. A lot of places I hunt, there are no containment areas or whatever, or bombing areas where those deer can get away. They have to live within those people. And you kind of see how there's guys everywhere. How is a deer 6 years old getting by? So I'm killing them by finding those niches. That's really been my thing, is the overlooked spots. A lot of times it's spots where they're just in the tree cover and stuff for somebody to hunt. So, my terrain in a lot of cases is different. I hunt a lot of swamp, but I hunt hill too. But in the swamp, what I'll find is that there's areas where there's no adequate trees, and you couldn't hunt off the ground because the stuff's too thick. Well, I get into these little bushes just off the ground where I can shoot over the cattails or over the brush, the dogwood or whatever, where it's not my way for a shot, but I'm not up in a tree either. You find some way to hunt the stuff that nobody's hunting, basically. And here, it's probably going to be overlooked stuff by roads or something, or stuff that has the terrain, like the benches, the hubs or whatever, but so mildly that other people don't notice it. They go to the big picture ones. When me and Eric were walking around looking at this stuff, every hub we walked in was full of cameras, full ladder stands, those, you're not shooting 6-year-old deer by hunting that. You could, you get lucky, especially if there's a lot of them around in the bombing areas, but if you want to shoot them consistently, you gotta constantly think about, in my mind, you gotta think about how are they getting by and nobody's getting them. What's being missed here? I'm always looking at a property and thinking, where's everybody going, or are they not? And trying to find the things I need in the terrain where they're not. With that said, the basics are, in hill countries, you're looking for like areas like thermal hubs like this. So if you look at this, you got a series of draws that come into here in the low area, like waterways that come down and come out. So those bucks can live in here. If this is an undisturbed area, they can live in there and they can move around here and bed on each one of these points based on the wind, and never have to leave that area. So say that you got a wind coming in here like this, they can bed up in here, or they can bed on this area here, or they can bed over in here. Because what they're going to want is they're going to want wind over back looking downhill. We call that leeward. They're going to bed looking downhill with the wind to their back. They want to smell what's above. And then it gets an elevation where you're in that top third of that elevation. And what happens is that wind coming over the top, during the day when it's hot out, means the thermal rising. And right where they meet is where they bed. And if some of you think that's a little crazy, if you get out there in like January, February and look at the beds, you'll see exactly what I mean. They're always in the same spot. You'll find them right there locked in. So they're going to move a spot like this. They don't have to make very big moves. And if the wind changes during the day, they can just make a short move to get to another bed without having to go cross country or get left vulnerable, which is why they kind of pick that stuff. It's not that they're super intelligent or anything. It's just that over 5 or 6 years they start to learn this. You don't see it as much with the younger deer. So you'll find areas that hold big bucks and areas that hold a lot of younger bucks but have a lot of sign, like 1 and 2-year-olds and stuff. And 2-year-olds can rip up a lot of trees. Make it look like a really active area. But you'll find that the bigger bucks are kind of stick to certain areas. So this is a thermal hub here, and one of the main ways I hunt these is either hunting them up high is hard, but right now at this time of year, it's kind of what you got to do. So what I learned here, it's a little different in my state, but what I learned here is right now all the oaks are dropping up high. There's no oaks dropping down low. By me, in the hill country of Wisconsin, there's oaks everywhere. So they're down low, they're dropping, up high, they're dropping. And it gets really hard to hunt at this time of year if there's acorns dropping because the deer will just bed under the oaks, get up and eat and never move. Where here, they're a little more sporadic. There's a lot more different types of trees. Where we're like probably, what do you think, Eric, 50% oak?
Yeah, I would say easy.
So there's trees dropping everywhere. It sounds like a rainforest when you're out there. So right now, if I was hunting these deer, I'd be hunting up tops, trying to get them coming out. Which is a little harder, as you can see, they can be coming out kind of anywhere. But later on, say towards rut here, I'd be looking for that wind blowing right down. If it's not, I'd be looking at a different one, like over here maybe, blowing this way. And I'd come in from the bottom if I could. And come right in till the wind starts to swirl and stop. And if you got them things dropping and coming down to food down here, then bottoms are dead. Basically, if you got out there in spring and walked around, you can look at these beds and they repeat themselves year after year. And you can look at the trails coming out. Where do they go? What I'll do is I'll look at the bedding areas and I'll follow those trails back to a point where, okay, he's bedding there on this wind looking downhill, I'll go to the first point, as close as I can to where, from those beds, where I have the wind to my advantage, the sound, the sight. As soon as I'm out of sound, sight, and smell, I'll look for a setup, and I'll make a plan to come back in there. And I'll make those plans at all these spots all over the place. And probably 3/4 of the big bucks that I kill are from a plan like that. You know, about 25% of them are figuring them out during the season. But usually my spring scouting pays off where I kill these deer. And for those of you who don't spring scout, once you do it, you won't believe how much you'll open your eyes. If you go out there and find those beds and look at it, and you can really find those overlooked spots too. You can start looking around roads and stuff.
It's hard for me to see. What would your range of out of sight sound and smell? What like?
In swamp terrain, I'm usually within 75 yards. In hilly country, it gets a little harder. Sometimes I'm as far back as 200 or something, just because of their sight, their sound and stuff. This terrain, you can probably get closer to the terrain where I come from because it's thicker. You know, up north, there's not as much brush. You know, it's a little more cleared. So probably within 100, maybe. But it's going to vary. Every one of them is different. You might be 300 yards away, you might be 75 yards away, but I can tell you this. When you look at the mature bucks I've killed where I knew where they were bedded, I've seen some of them get out of their beds, and I kill them 75, 100 yards from their bed at closing time. So if you're 200, 300 yards back, a lot of times you're out of game. And I think a lot of people, the big bucks that they kill, they're hunting sign, they don't even realize they're shooting that buck bedded 200 yards from them. They think that the deer's traveling. But like I said, I mean, if they're traveling 500, 600 yards in a day, they're not living to be 5, 6 years old. They're just not. They get killed. You know, think about the number of people that are in here during rut when they move the most. You know, even during rut, what I'm finding is those big bucks, when they do go chasing, there might be 1 or 2 days where they're really running around like everybody thinks they do every day. But the real movements during that rut are usually in little windows where there ain't a lot of hunting pressure between 2 bedding areas. Then you go through the open, you know, in that daytime, midday kind of crap. But running across country, if they're running around here during the rut all day long, they all get killed. I mean, just take a walk around the rut and see how fast you run into people that are pissed at you for walking around. Any other questions?
When you were saying that you would come up from those bottoms with that wind coming through that thermal hub there.
Yep.
I mean, in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, but with that wind going that way, you'd be expecting the buck to be looking down that ridge, right?
Yes.
And so what you're saying is you'd be coming up to when you get in that range, but you're hunting below the buck, expecting him to come down, or?
If I was hunting down here, I'd be expecting them to drop.
Right, okay.
So I'd be looking for sign that they're dropping down here, maybe feeding back in here. Like say you know that there's a food source back here, a cornfield or something, and you check that cornfield and see food or browsing in there. Maybe even over here or something. You're like, okay, where could a big buck be bedding if he was looking to come to this field? Because there's a sign that there's a big buck here at night, right? And that's the kind of place I'd have a trail cam. Because I just want to know one exists.
Right.
My scouting would kill him, right? Not the camera. So if I had a cornfield or something here off base, say, or maybe some food source over here, right? And I got a picture of a big buck. I'm looking around, where's he coming from? And I got a wind going that way. I'm like, oh, here's a thermal pump coming out of here. And if the trails are kind of coming from that way, maybe I just follow right into here. And I'm going to get to a point where he's not going to see me or smell me or whatever. But if I get too far in there, there's going to be swirling. You get right in that bottom, there's going to be swirling. So you got to kind of play it. You got to walk in there and feel the wind and kind of look at what you can get away with. I would imagine, and that's why you're waiting for that wind to be perfect on those hubs. Because if you got any kind of crosswind, as soon as it's getting in there, it's swirling. But if it goes downhill, it'll just go right out of there, and your thermals will drop right out of there.
So in the off chance, so I mean, I would assume that's going to be more of like an afternoon, evening, if you're
Yeah.
going on the bottom to cool down. At some point, are you
You
going
can get in there in the morning too.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you going to come from the top side on that instance, expecting them to come into the bed from the bottom, or?
That's a good question. Let me go a little off topic. What I've noticed with these bucks is when they bed in a spot all day, they kind of just get up and leave. So when you look at the bedding areas, the main trails that come out of those beds, there might be 1, there might be 3, and there's usually a bedding area, not a bed. You know what I mean? There'd be several beds that they hop around based on the wind, And when they go in there in the evening, I mean, when they come out of there in the morning, they go and they smell it in the morning. They'll go downwind of it, smell it, and either then hook into the wind or they'll go past and then come back. But they want to smell it as safe, I believe. And almost like they leave a trail that they're watching. I don't know if that's from the history of them being hunted by wolves and predators, you know, maybe it's genetics. But they seem to go past. And like if you ever track a wounded deer, you walk past him and also you come back and you're like, here's his bed, and then he ran out of it. And, oh, fucker watched me walk by, you know? So they'll do that in the mornings. But when they leave in the evenings, it seems like they've been sitting there all day and they've got this perfect setup where they got the wind, they got the sight, they either have sound or they have sight, or they have a way of locking themselves in there where they think they got the perfect thing and they know if anybody's within 100 yards of them, right? So in the evening, they feel safe and they just get up and go down the trail. I really don't see them use the wind to leave with that. I've never seen it. I mean, if it works out that way, great for them. I mean, then they seem to leave you maybe a little earlier, feel safer. But I've never seen them use the wind leaving a bed. But going in, I see them do it quite often. They'll circle it, go downwind. It's like they got to check to see if it's a safe area. And it does seem kind of like they leave their trail in a way that they want to be able to monitor it, you know.
So you going back a little bit, you brought up like the wind shifts and the changes in how a deer might go from that leeward side to another point. Would you, if you knew that you were going from a south wind to an east wind as being closer to dark, would you hunt that shift of that east wind, a spot there, knowing that buck will get up and move into that for safety, or would you go to where the wind is, you know, at 3 o'clock?
I have hunted the wind shifts and done mediocre with it. I've never killed one on a wind shift. I know people who have, but a lot of times those wind shifts, like they're around something like this, are so short it's hard to get in between. It's especially hard to get in between with the wind because winds don't just shift, you know, like they're going north, now they're going south. There's like a mixing, and a lot of times you get busted. You know, if it's a longer shift, it's a little easier to get away with. It is difficult. You probably got to be closer to the bedding they're going to go to than, you know, the in-between stuff. But it can be done. I know people have done it. But it's scenario specific. A lot of this is, you know, like too short of a distance, you can almost see across, you know. Which is why they like these areas. They don't have to move far to change the wind. A lot of this is me assuming what a deer is thinking. I'm just going off of what I've seen based on, you know, sign, observation over the years, looking at the beds. And really, when you get out there in the spring and you walk around, if any of you haven't done it, I really recommend it. You go out there right after season and really look at these bedding areas. The amount you will learn is incredible. I mean, you can look at those beds and you can just tell what they're kind of thinking. You can see how they do it. You know, they put obstacles against their back. They got a view. Quite often, I find the biggest bucks will be right next to main entrances. Especially like you go down these roads, you see where there's a trail that pulls in and then stops you, right? That attracts a lot of people. That kind of stop, right? Then you go out and there's a trail going down, and people go down. Some will go down a little ways and spread off. Some will go down a long ways. Some will look for the land features. But you know what nobody does? They don't park there, you know, pull off the road and then walk back to the road and hunt to the side.
This particular spot is in an area where to get to the tops would take you too long to get out of here. You have to be to your truck and checked out by an hour after closing. So people really have a hard time getting to the tops up here. And they go up these draws a lot around here, as we've seen with the sign and the cameras and stuff in every draw. So I found a draw over here that it was kind of hidden in the fact that it's across from a building. There's no parking right there. You kind of got to squeeze your truck in, and didn't look like people were noticing it. So I came up here. I didn't see any human sign whatsoever, and I picked up a crap ton of deer sign. Now there's a little bit of buck sign. I didn't see anything that glowed giant buck, but I know there's giant bucks in the area and there's a ton of deer sign. And I got to a point where there's this little draw here that I'm sitting in. I don't know if you see this here. It's just, this cut goes down, 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 down. Literally, if I fell on this side of the tree, I'd fall 30 feet. If I fell on that side of the tree, I'd fall 18. Makes you a little nervous looking down there. Not only would I fall that far, but I'd roll probably 100 feet. They'd have to find me with a helicopter and infrared looking down into here. Thank God for safety harnesses, right? But when I rounded the corner to sneak in here, I probably, back 100 yards, I jumped a couple deer. I got to here, I jumped about 5 more. I got to one of the beds right over there where one of the deer jumped, and it was obviously a buck bed. A little concerning. But there's good bedding terrain up there, which is what makes me want to sit here. And you can see that the trails show a lot more deer traveling this way. But unfortunately, the deer I busted did crash off that way. Now, none of them ran hard, but a couple of them blew. But they didn't, if they saw me, they just got a glimpse. They heard a branch or two break. And they probably got a glimpse of me coming through the brush, but it was too far for a deer to have seen me clearly, and they couldn't have smelled me. So hopefully I didn't do too much damage, and hopefully more deer show up.
And a lot of times I'll find these big bucks in the positions where they can actually see the axis and they're watching people enter. And it's quite often. I mean, we've killed quite a few like that. One of my biggest bucks, it was a buck that ended up field dress that bottomed out a 300-pound scale. We don't know what it actually weighed. I shot that in Wisconsin. It's a little deer, a little heavier up there. But that buck was living next to the main parking lot, watching everybody. There'd be 5 to 10 cars there every evening. And that's a spot where there's no place to really hide. There's no protected area, right? But you would sit there watching that parking lot. And when I figured that out, I had to come in a little different, so you couldn't see me. But I killed him the first day I hunted. And there was another big 10-pointer in the same spot. So a lot of times, they're kind of set up hunting you. And you really got to get in the mindset that they kind of learn where people hunt. So, if you're competing against them, if you go into a spot and I got to beat this guy over there, I don't want to be there. You can have it. Because if other people are looking at that as a hunt spot, I'm looking at it as the deer around that. At least the ones of the age class I want to hunt. I'm not saying I wouldn't shoot a 2 or 3-year-old as a nice buck that does kind of use those patterns, but I'm saying I want to be in the game for those giants, those old ones. If you want to be in the game, you got to hunt their game all the time, right? Any other questions?
Might be a dumb question, but I walk up on this hill and I see these words, the bedding area. My question would be, are the big bucks bedding with the does? You're thinking, I'm seeing there's 4 good beds here. Then I walk over, there's one way over there, 30 yards away from it, another one over there. And I'm like, wonder if this is a group of does over here and the bucks are out there.
So usually, the way I tell the difference is a buck is a solitary animal. Those are group animals. So a buck will bed in a way where he's got an obstacle to his back. He'll cover all his bases. He can look one direction, or he'll get in a hole really thick. Then he can bed there on any wind, but he'll be looking downwind, and he'll put something to his back so you can't see him from behind, but you can see in front of him in the country a lot, right? And a does will go in a group, and they'll bed in a circle. There won't be any obstacles or anything. The beds, if you start looking around, you'll see that there's several in a circle all facing a different direction. And what they do is they go as a team, and they're looking out for each other. They're a family group, right? The bucks can care less about everybody else but themselves. So they bed solitary. And what you will find is you will go in and you'll see does come out of buck bed areas. Solitary does, lone does. They have it happen all the time. But does in groups will bed in them circles. But what you will find also is those bucks where they bed at that 1/3 level, right above them, usually in the same areas, you'll get doe beds. And a lot of times, one of the biggest problems with this is when you get close like I do, If you get in there, also know these does jump up and scoop the buck. That happens quite often too. But I have had it where the does scoop off and the buck runs anyways. But I've had it where the does scoop off and the buck gets up and runs out.
We were out with those military guys today, and it was definitely pretty cool to take those guys through and, you know, do something in return for them. I think every single guy learned something good on that trip, on that scouting trip. Took something away from it, learned from it. It was pretty awesome, and I think all those guys really appreciated it too. Dan actually took a guy out that he just started shooting a bow 30 days ago. 1 month ago was the first time he ever shot a bow. And Dan has got him out hunting with him right now, which is super cool. I'm just hoping that he gets a crack at something, but if it's a giant buck, hopefully he doesn't think hunting is that easy. The area that I'm in is a long, drawn out ridge, and there's a lot of bedding points off of it. Leeward bedding points for the wind that is today, which essentially is non-existent at the moment. Everything is kind of thermals right now. But I made my way up this little pinch point on this ridge, and I had a couple of really fresh scrapes, and I had a really good rub on a tree that was extremely fresh, like within the last 2 days. And I ended up jumping something pretty close to there on a little point. So I think I certainly kicked the buck off. It very well could have been the buck that left this sign behind. But obviously there's going to be other bucks in the area. That's why they're marking everything up. That ridge that I walked up is straight out behind me from this way. And I just took the top of that ridge out, and everything looked really good out here. There's a little point off to the side out here that I jumped that deer off of. It is so quiet out here that walking in these leaves, it just, I mean, you really got to be careful. Had I known he was there, I would have just set up down a ways. But after I jumped him, I just decided to push on. I did debate setting up back there, but I just wasn't seeing the sign that I wanted. So I just pushed on up this this ridge here, and right back in this stuff. This is where I found that really good rub, and that trail kind of came into here, and it continues on down into, there's like 3 fingers out here. I know it looks kind of funny. I chopped my finger off at one point in time and had it sewed back on. So, but anyway, there's like 3 little points out here that another buck could very well be bedded. I mean, there's features all the way down a ridge this way that could hold bucks. There's features down a ridge straight behind me that could hold bucks. All the bedding is here. I even have, when I got in here, you can see a little bed right here. I think there was definitely some bedding in here in the past, but you can see how everything is just beat down in here. And look how thick all the way around. It's so thick. And what this is just a little low area on top of a ridge. I'm thinking those are bedding in here. I've got a buck working in behind me. I cannot tell how big he is. And I have no shooting that way. just a spot where I can get a shot off. He's a good one. Come on, give me a shot. Yeah, he's a good buck. Come on, give me a shot. I have nothing in there, and I think he's just gonna stay in that thick stuff. Oh, dang it. Come on, out. He's working his way right in here. wasn't a giant at least. That's okay. I hate this opening in here following these rubs in. And this is the first opening I came across. And running short on time last night and everything. You can see how thick everything is in here. There's not a lot of shooting. I thought this was the first available opportunity I would have a shot at something. I expected early movement because of how thick it is in here. I think a buck would be comfortable working through this stuff, you know, before shooting light is up. But with this opening, you know, I wanted to take advantage of that because I had some decent shooting in here. There's a ridge that continues this way, and there's a ridge that comes that way, and everything just kind of meets right here. There's a couple draws that meet right here, along with those ridges, and there's a little bit of bedding in here. It just looked like a really good spot to set up. So all the sign, you know, there's trails coming from all over the place that meet right here, and that's what that buck was doing last night. Had he not spotted me, I have no doubt he would have worked his way right in here.
So where's your tree?
Right up here.
This one right here?
Yeah, that was the only tree I could find that made any sense.
Where did the buck come from?
Straight back this way off of this ridge.
In that tangle?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep, I didn't expect it at all.
You know what? With all this tangle up here, I would say they're probably bedding right around here. And if a guy could find a dropping oak, every one of them's gonna be heading towards it. I heard some acorns drop, but I don't know exactly where.
There's a stand of oaks over here I could see out of my tree. I believe it's that oak. I heard that dropping last night. I heard a lot.
We should probably try and sneak over there and check that out.
Yeah, I think so.
How far back is your stand?
My stand is probably
Where you were last night?
75 yards.
Yeah. This is where the buck came from, right?
Yes. Yep. Straight up this is a little ridge here with two extremely deep draws. And it just kind of funneled them right up into that.
You
little
pretty much
opening.
had to take this trail too because everything's too thick otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, you would get tied up in there pretty quick. But and it came across this bed here. And now I have no doubt that's where that thing was laying.
That's where he came from for sure.
Look at the shade he's in. Look how thick everything is around him.
There's a rub on that maple.
Yeah, there's nothing getting near that dude.
Yeah.
That's where he was. There's no doubt in my mind.
If you had like a north wind, say, right coming down, I'd be looking at all the ridges that are facing south. Because I would say that most of your sure bucks are going to be looking for that leeward wind, right? And if it's coming, you know, this way, I'd be looking for the leeward ridges facing this way, right? So basically, you can cut off a lot of your map. What I usually did with beginners when I would teach people how to do this is I would take markers of different color and I'd mark all the leeward ridges like red that were north, and I mark them all yellow that were east, you know. And then you could look at it and go, okay, what wind is it? What should I be concentrating on? And within that, where do I want to hunt? And I look based on wind direction mainly for where I pick areas to hunt. At this time of year, if you don't have that spring skeleton and you don't know, you're guessing. But you can guess pretty well. You can kind of look at stuff and guess. But I'm always, for me, it's not just looking at the terrain, which is what most people do. And then it gets successful here and there, right? It's also looking at where do all these people go and how do I find the little niches where they don't? Is it beside a road? Is it because I'm gonna get back far enough that they're not getting there and, you know, maybe I leave my stand there and I can race back to the truck in time. However it is, you know, you gotta find those niches where people aren't getting into it.
So you brought up that particular scenario, hunting the bottom, and you talked about it earlier. And obviously you notice we don't have, like ideally would be to walk the river into that bottom and come
Yeah.
up. But unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do it because that river steps outside of that hunting area.
Yes.
So would you walk the top until you can get down to the bottom and then cut in, staying in the hunting area, or?
Yeah, I would look for a way I could sacrifice, maybe come in through here or something, or, you know, however I gotta get in there. And the thing is, it can take you longer to get in there than what you need to get out. I mean, it doesn't matter once you hunt it, you race right through it, unless you're gonna hunt it again. You know? And that's another thing for me. I think these deer are way more inept at picking you up than people know. These guys, I see a lot of these guys drop a trail camera out there and then think they can come back a week later and hunt. And that's just like a hunt. You went in there and put your scent in there. There's no fooling these deer's noses. They're gonna know that you were there. Some deer will return, some won't. But your smarter ones ain't coming back. They're gonna figure out where you were, or they're gonna come back paranoid. They're gonna start circling around, smelling to see if you're there. That first strike is always your best one. You know, I'm a big stats guy. So I really look back at what I've killed. And, you know, when you look at the majority of my biggest bucks, something like 75 to 80% of them were shot in the very first time on the spot. When you get to the deer that are like 4 years old or older. But when you look at the majority of my bucks, that's not the case. When you look at the 2 and 3 year olds I've shot, the majority of those are return stands or rut stands or that kind of stuff. But the mature bucks are, most of the time, the very first time I go into an area, very first time, or the first time I hunted. A lot of times I'm in there in the spring, they're not even bedded there. They've been assigned from when they were bedded there. I ran trail cameras in bedding areas for years just to kind of get some answers to some questions I have. And one thing I learned is these bucks have very unique patterns. Is these bedding areas would have specific time frames when the deer would bed there. So like a 2-week period would be what I'd see the most. You know, you had some areas where they bedded a lot more. Well, most of these good bedding areas have like a 2-week peak period where during that 2 weeks, this buck might be there, you know, 4 to 6 or 7 times. Which might not sound like a lot, but think about the odds. If you're in that 2-week period, you have a lot better chance of killing that thing than if you're out of it, right? And the real key is to figure out those 2-week periods too. For example, I shot a buck that was, I think he was 7 years old, he might have been older. I hunted him for 5 years. History was the same. We lived in a cattail marsh. And I was having a really hard time hunting him because there was very few trees. And I had figured out 3 places I could hunt him. And I had hunted him there, and that buck had figured me out. So now even years later, he'd come in paranoid, downwind, smell it, and I couldn't kill this thing. And it was driving me nuts. I really wanted to get this thing. So I went out in this marsh in spring and really just tried to figure it out. And I'd already been to everywhere in here. There was just something bothering me. I was like, maybe I can find some short cattails and I can get them on the ground, maybe, you know. And I ran into something I hadn't seen before, which was this little high spot. And I had seen this high spot before, but it never really clicked with me, you know what I mean? And this time it did. It had some willow brush on one side of it. It was probably like 20, 30 yards long and about 15 yards wide. And this willow brush in my area in the north drops its leaves in early October. And all the willow brush ripped up the ropes. Just ripped up the big ropes. I mean, branches like that broken in half. And there's beds under this willow brush like crazy, like 75 of them. And that were used over and over again. They would move around based on the wind or whatever. And so now I know a mature buck's living there. And I know he's not there past mid-October because he ain't gonna lay in an open spot in the cattails in the middle of the sun. The rubs were older, you could tell they're from earlier in this, you know, season. So I'm saying, okay, what do we got here? We got a buck that is bedding here from antlers hard till mid-October. That's a pretty short period, you know, a few weeks. And all these beds, he's probably here pretty much on a regular basis in that time period. So I formulated a plan to come in there and hunt that spot. Well, first what I did was I followed the trail, the main trail going out of there. And it went onto some private land. And where it went onto that private land, there's a little finger of brush, and there's one tree. And that brush was about this big around. And I could get a stand about this high without it shaking too much. And I could shoot over the cattails into the trails and have a little back cover. So I made sure that there was a little branch in the way I clipped it so I could get a shot through there and get a stand in there quietly. And then the next problem was I had to have a brisk north wind because access is over here, the trees here, the deer's here, and everything is like 16 inches of water all the way around it, and cattails that are 10 feet tall. So you're gonna make noise. So the first brisk north wind that we had that came around, I went in there and got to the tree, set up. I had a fawn get up next to me about 15, 20 yards from me a little while later. And then in front of me, I had a doe get up. She starts feeding into towards the fawn. She's coming right underneath me, and then I hear something come out of that brush overhead of me. The bedding area was about 75 yards from me. Coming down the trail, you hear sloshing. But the doe got underneath me and looked over when she was about me to you. Saw the first stick, saw the second stick, saw me. Blew, dropped to the ground, ran out in front of me in between whatever was coming out of the swamp, and started blowing like crazy. Wouldn't stop. And next time I heard that buck was way up. So keep him honest. I hunted the next day, didn't kill him, didn't see him, nothing came. Which is what I figured, but you want to make sure that he didn't just think, well, that was a fluke when he comes back. Then I stayed away for years. I didn't want to get my scent in or ruin it or anything. Now he's on me. The next year, very first north wind was brisk. I did the exact same thing. It was the 5th day of our season in September. And that time, the only thing that was different is the does weren't there.
That over there is buck bedding out in there. And there's a trail that comes in just like this and comes around down here. And another one that comes down here. See the trail going to the bedding? See how heavy it is? See how all the cattails are broken down on it? Here's a little tip for you. Those big bucks go down those big open trails. If you're in a trail that you can barely get your bow down, you know, that's does. Small bucks. Big bucks can't get their rack through those trails, just like you couldn't get your bow through there sideways. You can tell which trails are being used by the bucks. The tips of the cattails will be broken off at rack height, and the trail will be wide open like that. There's such a thing as too thick. He's still right over there. He didn't go but 20 yards. I saw him right behind the bushes moving a couple minutes ago. I think I might have to leave that one overnight. Come back in the morning. I'm gonna have to sneak out of here without spooking it.
Good boy! That's a good boy! Good boy! Yeah, that's a good boy, man.
Check it out, Dan.
Nice
Holy
job, buddy.
cow, dude. Congratulations. Good job.
All right.
That thing is awesome.
That thing is nice.
Holy cow, that is awesome, dude.
Yeah. Couldn't have done it without you, Max.
Good job, buddy.
Max is excited. Good job, Max. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah.
Actually, this deer got off the trail where it was and got off to the side, and we lost the blood trail, and probably would have had a very difficult time finding this thing in this maze of cattails.
Absolutely.
But the dog just ran right to it.
The whole point of that story is I figured out the timing. You know, a lot of guys just think, you know, you hear it over and over again, like, I found a really good spot, so I'm gonna save it for rut. Was it a rut spot? You know, that's what you gotta think, you know. They have timing to it, and you gotta use little clues to figure out that timing. Oh, what are the rubs? You know, are they here because of acorns? Are they here because of some plant source that they're feeding on? Are they here because of does? Why are they here? Why are they bedding here? And be a detective when you're looking at those bedding areas. Figure out the timing. And if you hit the timing right, you'll do real well. I try to hunt my spots that I figure out once or twice a year. Now that might sound pretty extreme, but I scout more than I hunt. You know, 4 months of the year I'm in the woods every day looking for spots, and I'm building them up over years, right? So when you're starting out, that's pretty much a lot to ask. But I can tell you this, your scent probably lingers in there for 30 days. You know, and those deer are gonna know you were there. So every time you hunt a spot, you're telling them, I was here. And like I said before, I'm learning that, you know, most of those really big mature bucks I'm shooting is the first sit, or at least the first sit of the year.
Speaking about scents, what do you think about like synthetic scents or using real, you know, goat or something?
I believe it can work under the right scenarios, but buck has to be in the right mood. I don't think they can mimic a real doe in any regards, because they could. If you could take a real live doe in estrus and put it upwind of one of these big blocks of woods, every single buck in there would come up to it. Because if you ever seen one that's actually an estrus, every buck around will be chasing. But if a deer's in the right mood, it can be fun. Me personally, I'm not into that. I'm into the chest game. And I'm not saying it's wrong or it's bad or anything else. Do whatever you want, whatever you're into. But for me, it's the chest game. I like you know, the one-on-one with the deer. I don't use scents and calls and all that stuff. I might run it once it's out of range or something, but I kind of like that chest game. Trying to pick the one tree out of 10 million that buck's going to walk by and kill it. To me, that's just something that turns me on with it.
What about cover scents like fresh earth or a cedar or you know, scent away spray? Do you use any of that stuff? Do you believe in any of that stuff?
That's a good question. I don't believe in any of that. I don't think there's one thing you can do to fool a deer's nose. The way they smell is so insane next to ours. It's like you could poke a deer's eyes out, you could live blind, you'd be just fine. You take away the scent, you can't survive. Those deer can. There's nothing you can do to limit a native odor. Every test I've seen that's been independent of scent control companies has proved that you can't fool a deer's nose. Mythbusters did one. They got a hold of stock clothing, called them up, asked them how to do this test, and they took a guy and they cleaned him up, put him in. Then they took a guy and had him just take a shower, wear clean clothes, clean boots. Then they took a guy and had him do a workout routine, get all sweaty and nasty, wear tennis shoes, wear sweated up clothes, and they did a couple of tests. They took these 3 guys, they had them do a pattern on the same elevation of land, in the same scenario but not the same spot, and then they dropped a dog on it, which does not smell as good as a deer. And they timed how long it took the dog to catch each one of these guys. And then they did a test where they took these dogs and they put those people in boxes on a hill, and they'd walk the dog below the guys until the dog scented on them, and how fast it would take to get them from downwind, not where the people walked, just downwind. And ironically, in both tests, each time, the guy with scent control was the one guy falling first. Now, I kind of wonder if that's because his odor was cleaner and purer, it was easier for the dog to concentrate on it. I don't know. But for whatever reason, he was found first. He got really mad about it.
Yeah,
And
don't
so-
say.
So they said they did the test all wrong. So they said, we did everything you said you guys asked. And they didn't know it was Mythbusters when they answered how to do this stuff, right? So they came back with, here's what you gotta do. Redo the test. You have to tape every seam, you have to have gloves on there. You have to have a mask on to breathe through. You have to have your hair covered, your face covered. You have to know skin exposed, and your boots have to be cleaned with acetone.
Acetone.
That's what they said.
The stuff they don't sell.
So they did it. They did the test again. They had the exact same results. So what's funny is too, in the second test, they actually picked a sweaty guy, and I don't know why they did this, but they did. They scraped him down and they took the sweat crap off of him. Like they scraped his skin, and they made some potion of water, and they had him drag it behind him, and it's still my guy first. But ended up threatening to sue him, and they pulled all the shows. You can still find remnants of them if you Google it, but you can't find the whole show because they didn't want to get into a lawsuit, so they stopped. But, I've done really well at like conservancies, where they're actually like more tree huggers, but they allow hunting because that's how they fund their land. And I've done really well hunting right over the trails because you can repeatedly hunt. Because those deer walk across the trails, like, well, that's where people walk. They're used to the human scent. But you get 10 yards off that trail, and they freak out. The biggest buck I ever shot in Wisconsin, I shot with a shotgun, but that deer was living a lot under this willow tree in a pasture. And you'd walk right past it going in, the main axis walk right past it, little logging room. And I'd get back in the back, there's no open terrain. And I'd see that buck come out, get up, walk to where, everybody walks, smell it, right at dark. But there's no trees there, it's just short grass, how you hunt, So I walked back and I saw this a couple days in a row. And he seemed to be there most of when it was a west wind. And then one day I got there and I'm like, trying to figure out, well, I know he's right there, which would have been like where your tree line is. And I'm like, I get in line into this bush and I'm like this little patch of cattails that's in the grass. And I'm looking and I walk about 10 yards off and I'm looking at the trail. I'm like, no way, I'll hunt this. And I walk back and I went back in the woods and I watched that deer come out. And that day when he hit my scent 10 yards from that trail, he freed it. He took off barreling out of it and I didn't see him just because I wasn't on that trail. I ended up killing that buck we had a wind shift midday, and there was no place else for that thing to go because it was all wide open terrain. It was Thanksgiving Day, and I remember my mom getting mad because I've ruined so many Thanksgivings. I got to that point, I got in line with those cattails, and I bungeed my shotgun to my back. Back in those days, it was shotgun only in Wisconsin. And I crawled on my hands and knees to those cattails and stood up with that shotgun, and that buck was here to the water cooler there from me staring at me like this. I'm shot right into bed. And I remember, instead of being excited, I was like, why did I do this with a bow? Because I never had the confidence that I could get that close, crawling up to them or whatever, but it worked.
You said something about hunting the south side. What I'm thinking is, like looking at this ridge, would the deer more likely be there because of the sun's hitting that, and like not this side, but it's cold till noon, the sun's not gonna hit this side. So are they gonna be on that hill over there, based on the sun, it's warm over there, and then we shift and come over?
People always say they bet on a south-facing wind or a ridge when it's cold out, right? It's cold out, which direction is the wind going? It's leaving. I think it's more towards the wind, yeah. There's probably some truth to that when you get into North Country. I think there's a lot less truth to that down here. When you get into North Country and it's really cold, I think there's a little more truth to that. Because then it'll get into thermal stuff like the pines and stuff where it's 10 degrees warmer. But I think down here you're going to more find them leeward than you are going to find them bedding because of the temperatures. If they bedded because of temperatures here, it'd be more to get cool when it's hot. I think they would vary from their gravity probably, if there's not a lot of pressure. Maybe get down low and cool. They might bed when it's like really hot, they might bed a little further down in the draws. Like right down into where the wind swirls to, instead of up higher, put it right into the tight draw.
I've noticed that like when they're feeding a lot, when they get out to a field or something, in the early season, like early September, they feed primarily in the shaded area of that field versus the wide open sun.
Sure.
I've never really seen it bedding wise, but feeding wise, like it's generally in a shaded area in the early season when it's 90 degrees outside.
Yeah, they're nocturnal, so being in bright light really hurts their eyes. That's why they don't like bedding in open sun, I believe, too. That hurts their eyes. So that's why they would sit in the shaded spot. They can't see, they feel, they're always worried about danger. I mean, they're a prey animal. So it would be like us if you could, you know, if they're feeding us here, this has got a light in here, you're not gonna go sit out in the dark over in the grass and eat, right? They're not gonna see very well in the open sun. You know, they're gonna go where they can see.
In your opinion, a deer is gonna favor its sense of smell over all of its other, all things being equal. If it has to be somewhere, it's gonna be somewhere where it smells better than it sees, than it hears. Or,
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, first day I got here, I went on, me and Eric ran out to the spot. I had a doe come up the side hill, and I had a whole bunch of squirrels playing over there. And I thought it was another squirrel and just moved my head like that, like an idiot. And it saw me. At 50 yards, it saw me. And then I just kind of froze, and it did the hot bob, the stomp. And you know what it did? It trotted down to me, went to 20 yards, from 50 yards, went to straight downwind and smelled, and then blew and took off.
There's a bunch of squirrels playing over there when that doe moved out. I kind of looked at it thinking it was a squirrel and it saw my head move. Now it's gonna sit here and blow. It didn't know what I was, but it saw movement. So if you watch what it did, it dropped right down into the ravine to where my thermals drop. It went to where it could smell whatever was up here. As soon as it smelled me, it ran and blew. But it actually came right into range and gave me a shot. It was where it was out of range because it had to smell me to confirm I was danger.
They can see you, that doesn't bother them as much as smelling you. And that's a hard thing for a human to, for us, it's all about eyesight. You know, if we were walking through the woods, I mean, a bear, you guys don't like bear hunts as much as I do up north, but a bear has a certain odor. You know, you get close to one, you can smell it, and you get used to that smell, you kind of know what it is. If I was in a tree stand and I smelled a bear, I questioned it. We all went, is that a bear? It smells like a bear. Or say a deer and rut, right? Smell a deer and rut. I'm walking on a trail, I'm like, man, it smells like a deer and rut came through. I think it is. You don't know until you see it. A deer, if he sees you, you don't know if you're danger or not. He's in questioning until he smells you. The smell is the danger. He does everything based on his nose. What were you saying?
I was just gonna ask, like, how do you feel about like the moon and how it plays a factor? So like new moons, full moons, and you were talking about the predatory animals and then worried about their safety. So do you believe that like on a full moon they eat more during the day than they will at night due to the fact of being exposed, where on a new moon they'd be out more at night versus during the day?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much difference that makes. I can say that there's patterns to how they move based on the moon. I think think it probably has more to do with position than it does with fold. I think overhead underfoot, they move a little more. But I don't think it has a big enough factor to really make a huge difference on hunting. I think a lot of people overemphasize it, kind of like they do with everything. Somebody finds some little twitch and it becomes the newest podcast phase or whatever. You still got to hunt things down normally. I'm pretty much out there hunting every day, and I don't see a huge difference. But then again, I'm hunting real close to where they bed, so I don't have to have them get another 50 yards or not, you know what I'm saying? It might be a little different if you're hunting a food plot, or you're hunting oaks or something, and I don't really do that, so I can't really say that they move a little better in that. But I have noticed that moon overhead, I seem to see them a little earlier in the day if the moon overhead is in the evening. I concentrated on that for a while, and on that theory, and I started logging, and I noticed that in the hill country in Wisconsin, there seemed to be a real distinct pattern that follows that moon phase. But when I tried the same pattern back home in the swamps, it was random. It didn't even match at all, which I don't know why.
So, like, I know you're not a big trail camera person. You are, you aren't. But like, I use a lot of trail cameras just for inventory or just movement, per se. I thought about this in the past and I never had any kind of luck with postings, but I was trying to do like a deer movement chart, or not an app, where even like a Facebook page, say, hey, if you see deer movement, post it. I don't give a shit if you're in Wisconsin, here, there, where. My curiosity is, if the deer are moving 6 miles from you or 100 yards from you, you know, is the deer up on their feet? Are they up on their feet here, here, or here? You know, I was curious about that. Have you ever noticed that? Like, you get a camera picture, oh, deer moving. Do you use that as that heightens your awareness or anything like that? Or
To a degree, yeah. What else I've noticed is that when you drive around and look at deer and stuff, or you just do your daily routine, I've noticed that you get patterns of deer movement, like say they start moving at like 5 in the afternoon, and then in a week they're moving at like 6 in the afternoon, and then 7 in the, it's like it's a changing shift, and I don't know why.
Patience. So once you said, hey, because you hunt so close to the bed, you know, you're right there in the living room with a common path. What do you say? I can only hunt this spot in these conditions, and just practice that patience until that, or do you pick a spot where you can hunt in multiple conditions? Where's patience come from?
Every spot's different. I look at every single scenario. I don't know what I have to do with it. Patience is huge. I mean, a lot of it is timing, like I said. If I think that that's a spot for a certain time, I do not want my scent in there before that. I want that to be pristine and to feel safe there. If they show up there and bed there early one day, or they walk through there, I want them to feel like it's safe. Like I said, I think your scent lingers there for 30 days. So if your scent is there for 30 days, it's probably not as potent at the end. They still smell that lingering, you know what I mean? So I don't want them to know I've been there. I don't want them to be weary of that spot at all. So I'm going in there at the timing exactly when I think it's going to be. If it's a spot where I can't get into it that close to a bed or whatever, because I might get seen, except for on certain days, I might wait till it's real windy, everything's moving, and then I can sneak with the wind and get in there. If it's a spot that has a lot of dry leaves and stuff, and I think it's a kill spot, and I think there's a good chance they're going to hear me, I'll wait till it rains. The leaves are wet, they're not making noise. And I'll have notes to that effect for each one of those spots.
So I was about to ask, do you like write that down ahead of time, say, hey, this spot, only if it's raining, only for this wind and rain, can I?
The best thing you can do is have it like a log book and keep track of that. And another reason for the log book is you're going to find out that these deer will do the same things year after year repetitive with dates. Those of you that run trail cameras in the same spot, what you're going to find is the same buck will show up the next year, the same days. Not exactly, but within a day or two. Yeah. You don't really think about it, but literally during hunting season, things change so rapidly that everything's changing all the time. So it makes sense in that two-week rule if you think about it. Acorn drop goes real fast. They eat the acorns, then they're onto this, they're onto that. They're, then they're into the pre-rut. then they're following the does, and then they're into the rut where they shift to the funnels and stuff. Everything changes so rapidly during the season that every 2 weeks is a huge difference. You know, so you kind of got to get that pattern down. You got to have that timing down. You got to have patience to go in when the timing is right. Absolutely.
You talked about like the terrain and different things, but how quiet are you walking in?
As quiet as it needs to be. So I'm going to rapidly walk, fast, hard. I'm going to make a lot of noise. Getting close. When I'm in the point where I think the deer can hear me, I'm going to slow down. And I'm going to go as slow as I need to be. I mean, the last thing I want to do is make any kind of foreign noise. I don't know if that makes a huge difference or not. It probably does. You break a branch, well, squirrels break branch, deers break branch. There ain't too many deer that clank a buckle against a metal tube, you know. So you can ruin everything by going too fast and making a noise that's foreign. If you make a noise that's not foreign but it's loud, the best thing you can do is just stop and wait 15 minutes. You know, you think about when you're in a tree stand and you hear a deer coming, right? You know that sound. You've all heard it. You hear a branch break, you hear some leaves rustle, you hear another branch break, it's coming closer, it's coming down the trail. You're like, all right, here he comes. You're ready, right? And you're standing up, you got your bow ready. Nothing happens, nothing happens. After 5 minutes, you're kind of looking around, every now and then you look back over there. You know, a few more minutes, you're like, man, I'm right, freaking squirrel. Half an hour later, you forgot all about it, right? So the longer you wait after you make a noise, the same thing with a deer. When you snap that branch, he's going to be concentrating on that, right? He's going to lose his focus after a minute or two. So you just wait 5 minutes, you know, before you move again. I mean, hopefully you're in here where you got a little time before the deer are going to move, you know? So you just wait it out.
You'd actually used the word logging something, and then you talked a lot about trends or data or what. How much, I mean, obviously you keep notes, right? You're a professional, so of course you keep notes. But for the average hunter, how much would you recommend and how important do you think it is to keep some sort of hunting log about what's going on in the woods?
I think a hunting journal is extremely important, and I think it's more important than most people think. And I think if you keep a hunting journal, you're going to be happy you did later on, because you're going to be reminded of all your hunts and stuff. You're going to be able to go through that. And that, I can't tell you, you know, there's been years when I don't keep a journal, years when I do, just because I live a fast-paced life. But when I go back to a journal, quite often, when I read about a hunt, the things that I kept for notes for, like the timing, the dates, quite often, the journal's lying to me. That ain't what I remember, but the journal's probably right. It's probably the old ticker that's not right, you know. So it's the same thing with like video. You know, a lot of times I'll videotape a hunt and I shoot a deer or whatever, and I'll be like, yeah, I shot it right behind the shoulder. I go back to the video and I'm like, oh, well, shot it in the shoulder. Video don't lie, and the journal pretty much don't lie either, because you're putting it down fresh. You know, and then when you go back, you'll see things that like, oh, you know, and you'll have things in your journal like, you know, come in from this way, or, you know, do this, or, you know, a good thing to do is like, when you're hunting like me and you're only hunting a tree once every year or two, take a picture of the tree, keep that in your journal. Because you'll get in there and you're not sure which tree, or, you know what I mean? And what I do too, when I'm going into these areas, like if I'm going blind, like we're going to be going, like any of you that are hunting now, if you haven't scouted, you're going to be going in and be guessing, right? A lot of times when I'm going in, and I'm getting to the area I want to hunt, I'm staying back a little bit, and I'm not walking around looking for the tree and stuff. I'm staying back and I'm scanning it first. I'm picking a tree, I'm looking at how the terrain goes, deciding which tree I should be in, and I'm walking towards it and I'm stopping again, and then I might say, well, wait, from this angle I can see it's at an angle, I really can't get in there, I'm going to have to do the different one. I'm not going to wander around, I'm going to do a lot of that from 1 or 2 spots, so I'm not getting my scent everywhere. Because even if the buck's going to get through, you're going to get a shot at him. Other deer are going to go through and smell where you walk and stuff, so I'm going to be careful about how I go in there. One thing I'm really going to be looking for is the landscape. As it gets evening, thermals are going to take over. And thermals are way more important than the wind. Yeah, so you want to be below, correct. So you always want to kind of be downhill in the deer or the trail, because in the evening, as soon as it starts to get cool, your scent is going to drop downhill. Now, as I found out yesterday, it's not always the case, but 90% of it is. And you can count on the thermals. Most of the time, wind is more iffy. I would be more concerned about the thermals than I am the wind. You don't want to set up with the wind blowing at the deer, but you can have the wind kind of blowing a little bad, like blowing across the trail or something. If you're downhill of it, it's going to be calm that evening, because that thermal's going to take over. It's going to do what it does.
So I'm following that trail in from the scrape. I've gotten a few hundred yards. It's gotten thicker and thicker and thicker. Way thicker than expected. Really not much I can set up on. I hope I'm not jumping does. But I believe that scrape was made this morning from a deer going in here. I haven't jumped any deer. I'm on his trail. I just found a fresh rub right there. Pretty fresh. But the whole trail has historical rubs. There ain't a lot of fresh sign, but that deer might have just moved there. Some of these units just opened up and people kick deer around. They shift around a lot. That deer might have just moved in here. What I do know is he came up this draw this morning. Probably, after daylight, how fresh that scrape was. So I'm trying to get that opening to set up ahead. There's a draw that goes up there. I think where the union is, there should be some really good sign. I'm just worried about how thick it might be for a setup. I guess we'll find out, because I'm not sitting up here. I'm going to keep moving. This is kind of what I was hoping to find up here. I'm right where the draws meet. Where there's a hub. This is a thermal hub. There's a giant scrape right there. I'm not going to walk over to it, but I bet it's fresh like the other one. There's no leaves in it. I can see a huge historical rub over there. The trail he came in on's right here. I can set up here. I can shoot. I can shoot this whole thing. I'm thinking about maybe getting on this side of the creek, either that tree or that tree, and just being able to shoot this flat area here. And I don't think I want to get any further. He could be up here, or he could be back there. I think he's back there based on the trail he came in on this morning. And I think he'll come back out here. Oh, I see a fresh rub up there too. So this is a hub. I'd be thinking he'd get to the hub in daylight. One can only hope, right? I just gotta find a tree. This whole area looks pretty good now. I don't want to sit over here, even though it'd be perfect for the wind for that scrape, because the trail he came in on's right there. He may have came like that, but the main trail goes right through here like that. So, I think I want to be over here and let my thermal follow this creek. You can kind of see there's a draw going up here. There could be bedding on there. They could drop down here. But most of the time they're going to come to where everything meets. They could come out of the draw over here. They could come out of the draw over there. If he comes, I'm suspecting he's going to come from that way. That's the way he went in. But who knows? He may have just went in there to go into the dropping thermal to his bed to turn around and watch his back trail. I don't know. But we're going to find out. One of the things that really drew me to this draw was that this is real small and micro, and this area gets a lot of pressure. All the bigger draws, when we went in them, we found cell cams and trail cams, footprints, bottles and stuff. Started looking at these smaller draws that are kind of off to the side and kind of forgotten about. And these draws and these bottoms don't appear to have much pressure. It's pretty obvious to me nobody's been in here yet. So that's probably why there's bucks using this. Ideally, out of these thermal hubs, when the bucks are bedded on these tops, you want the wind blowing straight down the draw, so it doesn't swirl. If it came crosswise, it would swirl in here. And then in the evening time, when it cools and calms, like now, all these draws and stuff, as the air cools, the thermals will drop and draw right down the draw like water. It's actually following a little creek straight down. That's exactly what I wanted.
That's another thing, I don't know how many of you got, use milkweed.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite tool. I keep that in my pocket of my vest. I always keep a bunch of it in there. When it's dead calm, you can't feel the wind, drop one of those, you'd be amazed. It's not wind direction, it shows you air currents. That milkweed is so light. I bet you want to see it, I got a bunch in my truck. But Eric, you got some?
Yeah.
You run get some?
Sure.
When you drop that stuff, it actually follows the air current. And what you'll see is a lot of times, it'll come down and go towards the trail, it'll actually turn 90 degrees and follow the terrain, where you're like, I can't hunt here because the wind's going the wrong way. And I've actually hunted upwind of deer, where I know the wind ain't gonna get to them because you drop milkweed, it follows that terrain. It also teaches you how to set up. Because when I get into these areas, you start to learn, and when you're dropping that milkweed, you're checking the wind currents. Every hunt, I'm floating that milkweed. I'm probably a giant milkweed, landing all over the place. But you start to learn how that wind follows the terrain and stuff. You start to learn what you can get away with. That stuff is an incredible tool. So many people like use dust, and all that tells you is, you know, what the wind is doing. Dust doesn't even work when it's dead calm. You know, you can not feel a thing, but you'll know exactly what your scent is doing when you drop that milkweed. And when you have like mediocre winds, you'll feel the wind in your face, and you think it's in your face, and the deer smells, and everybody says sixth sense. As soon as it's calm, drop that milkweed and see what's going on. It can be complete opposite. But you can't even feel the wind, but you can see where your scent's going with that milkweed. I've actually had it where you watch where that milkweed goes through the woods, and you watch the deer, and you're like, okay, this doe is going to win you right there. And watch her just stop right there. Look around. It's pretty cool
So
stuff.
do you keep one of them pods, like?
Yeah, I got a, what I do is, I don't like packs. I don't want a big pack hanging on my tree or the base of my tree or whatever. I'm a minimalist, pretty much. So I have a really old hunter safety vest, the ones that still had all the pockets. And my camera goes in one pocket, I got my harness thing in another pocket, I got my release in a pocket, I got a rangefinder, and the milkweed, and a rope to pull my bow up, and that's about all I take with me hunting. So this is milkweed. So pretty much want to pop the seed off, but it'll show you the actual air currents. And you know, you can't even really feel it, but you can see where the wind's going. And it'll just float like that forever. And you can see where it turns and how it follows the terrain. You watch that, and it's going to be blinded by the sun, but you can see what it does when it gets to the cattails. It's going to turn somehow because the wind's going to get pushed off of the cattails. It just kind of dropped there.
It didn't drop, it got stuck. I don't know if you can see it, but when it got down there over that ridge, it just got sucked straight down to the ground from the current.
Oh, no, where you're
You
hunting.
throw that me up.
Follow the floating cattails, you'll find there.
That's a hard one. You know, if I had to pick a favorite height, I think it would be 18 feet. I mean, it gives you the right angle. You're not getting so high, you're getting one lung. But, I mean, seldom am I a perfect height. I mean, sometimes you know, out here I'd probably be about 18 feet most of the time, just because you got the right trees. But I'm wherever I need to be based on the cover, based on the type of tree I got. Sometimes I'm 2 or 3 sticks out. Sometimes I'm up 5 sticks. Sometimes I'm at the ground. I use a stand and sticks because I know a lot of guys in the south here use climbers, but I can get in any tree that way. And it's pretty much light as a climber and easy to use because I can just unscrew it, put up a tree, and you know, quick and easy. But that gets me into any tree. If I got to pick a tree based on being straight and limbless, I might not be in the tree I need to be based on thermals and the terrain and that kind of thing. So I'm kind of giving myself more options with the stand and sticks.
He didn't make it.
Going back to when you were talking about overlooked areas, we were talking about that thermal hub, right? Coming from the bottom, kind of expecting the bucket to come down.
Yeah.
Like in this situation now, right, you've never hunted here, it's your first time coming down and hunting, and you would have went to that, right? And then, like I said, it happened to you already, and you ran into those points with all those cameras. At that point, what are you looking for necessarily to say, hey, my overlook area is more likely going to be here? Are you going to go back to that trail? Like, so like off of the head over here, you have what almost looks like would be an old trail. So like you start to put those kinds of things, but are you going to say you're going to come out here and start coming back to see where it's overlooked over here that they're going to be?
For me, I'm going to really stick on the terrain features. So I'm going to be pretty close to these spots. I'm going to look what the wind's doing. If the wind's kind of coming like this, I'm going to probably be down in here because I'm not going to want my wind blowing in there, right?
Right.
And I'm just going to ease my way into these points and stuff and kind of look for sign. And what me and Eric do a lot at this time of the year is we spend a lot of time on foot.
Yeah.
So we'll walk in those points, look at it. You'll find a lot of them like, I don't like this. You'll find one in, this looks okay, it's workable. But we'll keep looking. If we find something better, we'll go to something better. If we don't, we'll go back to the ones that look the best. And we'll just cover a lot of ground and scout most of the day. And then go back to what we thought was the best option. But we ease into a point, we're not blowing the deer out of there.
Right.
And then ease out. But if we don't go, if we take a spot and we walk in there and we check it out, and it looks okay, and we go find something better, I'm probably not going back to that spot again because I got my scent in there when the deer come out because the smell was there. It's not to say you couldn't go there and kill them. It's just to say it lowers your odds a little bit, and it's no longer a fresh spot. It's like it's hunting was. I mean, you got your scent in there.
Are there any terrain features when you're looking at the map and you scouting that you're just like, absolutely not even gonna waste my time over there?
I don't know exactly what you mean. Like I wouldn't drop into a situation where I think there's no way I won't get busted. Wind's blowing the wrong way or something.
Like, for example, like that little bottom right there where it says bottom. Right, yep, right there. So like, if I were to look at that, do you ever look at something like that and say, no, that's just not gonna be accessible for me, or it's too flat, or it's too something, to where you just rule it out altogether?
Yeah, I gotta cross out everything that's like wide open like this. I'm looking at all terrain feature stuff. That's where they're gonna be better kind of thing. So I'm always gonna be close to those elevations. And I'm gonna try to find the ones where nobody's looking at kind of, you know.
Do you like, so you immediately went to that up there in the top left, and I noticed like that's
Up here?
nope, where you're talking about the multiple draws coming together. You typically like, yeah, that, you immediately went to that and been teaching from that kind of the whole time. Is it because you kept the multiple draws coming in one spot, or what attracts you to it?
This place has been a little bit different for me because it seems like people are more educated on the terrain. But when I get up in the north country, people really don't seem to know how to hunt this country very well. And what I find is mature bucks just love stuff they can get anywhere around in a small area, in multiple spots for any wind. So I'm looking at, they want that wind in a certain way. And if the wind changes, are they going to be left alone? So mature buck, I don't know that they can reason they can go. They don't have a map app that they look at and say, hey, this is the spot to be. But over time, they never feel vulnerable. You know what I mean? When they end up in there, they find, well, they just move here or there. They end up staying in a spot like that quite a bit. And I mean, I found hubs like that that are just incredible. I hunted Iowa last year and I found this hub that was way out in an area where you had to find a back way into this spot. And my God, the deer that went through there were insane. They were coming off of those points and stuff, they're fighting over the bedding on those points. I mean, Iowa's a whole different ballgame. But you'll find a peak of activity around here for sure. I mean, I can look at this and say, you're in bed there quite a bit. You know, it's just a matter of how's the pressure here, or people on it. I mean, that's what makes it difficult when you got pressure. If you got guys camped out up here, in here, and around the outskirts, the deer can bed there all they want, you're not going to kill them. You're not going to come on daylight, you know, with the trap. But they're most likely going to shift over to something else. You know what I mean? There's too much pressure. But I would probably, if people are hunting down in these bottoms a lot, I would shift around these points and then here. Everything I could, try to get them around. Like right now, what I'm finding is at this time of the year here, they don't seem to be dropping down. They seem to be coming up because of the April. So I would be hunting somewhere around this outer perimeter up here, not down here. But I would probably think, what I could have live to make these spots. You guys hunt rut? How many hunt spots up there? See a lot of deer in that? Down the bottom, the draws. So So I figured they're running this kind of stuff. But right now, I would think these cars.
Like you, watching your videos, you're like, I'm put a mile and a half, 2 miles in. That's a pretty good sized hunting area. A lot of them are tiny. That's the thing. You go 1,200 yards and you're into another area. You can't cross into another area. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, a lot of people get really frustrated. Like, oh, go in deep. You can't really go in deep on some of these areas. When you get in the main area, like where you're hunting at up there, it's a decent sized area. It's not quite as big as this, but you have some really, really big. A lot of the good areas that I like to hunt are almost so small. You go 500-600 yards, and it's like that's about as far as you really want to go, because if not, you're going to be encroaching on some of the other areas. It's really challenging.
It does, you do have a lot of unique challenges here.
They don't, it's like, they have there's 3 areas in particular, they really should just merge them together, but they don't. And the best area to hunt, you can only access it one way. You can't cross another area. So you get like strip land, and it's also, you're coming in on the upwind side. So getting into those spots, some of them are really hard, to get screwed. It's challenging.
Yeah, another challenge you got here is that, you have 1 hour after closing thing. I mean, a lot of times in a place like this with the pressure they have here, I just out walk people. And I can't do that because I can't get back in time. I mean, the first spot I was gonna go to, I got about halfway there and realized there's no way I'm getting back to the truck in time if I go any further. And, yeah, I was 0.6 from the truck, 6.8 or something like that. And by a straight line, but just going up this rocky draw and stuff, I couldn't move very fast. And still, I made it out like 5 minutes in time. So I'm like, okay, learn that lesson. I don't want to be late and get a reprimand.
They're talking about fixing that next year, but they're not going to extend it that long. Or even the legal shooting capacity earlier in the state. They're talking about extending that a little bit too. It's all regulation.
Anything else?
Did I hear you say something a while ago about the third? Are you talking like, how far up do you, or down do you think they're bedding?
Stop through like you know, once the elevation lines get steep, right around where you start getting steep. You know, we got something we call a military crest. They don't have it on all the hills, but where the hill's coming down gradually, all of a sudden there'll be a drop down. That rapid drop is called military crest. Right there is where you bed quite often. Because they get the natural wind comes down, and the thermal comes up, and that's where it meets. I mean, some of the hills are more rounded, and then when they're rounded, what you get is they vary based on the heat and the sun and the thermals, because they'll change during the day. They'll get up and they'll move, they'll go back down lower, they'll go higher. And then the beds aren't as warm, they're harder to see. And when you got a good military crest, the beds are exactly on the military crest. Usually, it's like a line on the military crest. But the more rounded hills, it's a lot harder to see the beds. You got to basically move along the terrain.
So for everyone who's currently still active duty, just like you, we travel all over the country to hunt. Unfortunately, we're forced to move all over the country. We have to adapt to new areas. So throughout all your experience, is there ever like the one similarity that you stick to in every state that you want to do? And I know for a fact, this is one thing I have to focus on regardless of where I'm at.
Leeward Hills. Leeward Hills, you know, if I'm on hill country, Leeward.
What about if like you start getting into like flat area, things like that?
Wet stuff. Deer love a water barrier between predators. As long as it's thick enough that it can, it has vegetation in it. That's been just incredibly good for me. It's like most people, for whatever reason, when they put rubber boots on, they're afraid of 6 inches of water. So go in it. I go straight to the water. It's like when you can basically flat land. Not this hill stuff. Hill stuff is the lever stuff. You can basically flat land. There's a rule of lowest and highest elevation. The lowest elevation out of the water, and the highest elevation of the land will hold the box, the bed. They'll either be on the slight rises where they can see a little bit, or they'll be down at that really low level where the vegetation is thick and they got the water escape and stuff. And the rest is kind of the gray area in between where they feed and trail. But if it's hilly, I'm looking at leeward. You know, if it's, you're gonna kind of look too, I mean, you get to places like, where there really ain't water, so then you're looking at thick cover. You know, you get into big woods, you're looking at, edge transitions, edges of clear cuts, edges of rivers, openings. You're really not going to do very well in a flat big wood scenario, just hunting randomly in the woods someplace. You have to kind of base it on the openings, as you can see on an aerial. And they'll use that stuff too. I mean, they use that to change the wind and stuff, you know, changes the vegetation, even the elevation. You wouldn't believe how different the plant life is, you know, on flat land, 5 feet higher than another spot. You know, so there'll be different feeding areas. You know, that they feed on different types of vegetation. They don't travel to. It's a little complex.
Would you backtrack and get on another trail and see where that one takes you as well, and just keep doing that until you have all those trails pinpointed?
Yeah, I would have a circle around here if I thought there's a good buck bed in here where I'd have it figured out for where I think he's going. Sometimes, when you're lucky, there's one trail that comes out and it's easy. A lot of times there's 3 or 4. In this case, it's not bedded enough to even really see the trail. We could probably follow the rub line, but obviously something has been here. It has been here recently. There's some rubs. Probably not the greatest buck in the world by the height of it, but
that's something that I kept seeing on your YouTube videos. You kept talking about the height of the rub. What's a good height that you just say, yeah,
well,
that is most likely a mature
take this
buck?
with a grain of salt, because in Wisconsin, our bucks are bigger than yours. It's a different genetically breed. I've shot deer that one of them bottomed out a 300-pound scale field dress. I don't think you're going to ever get that down here, not even with your biggest buck. I mean, I ran into some kid yesterday that showed me this picture of this wide buck, showed it to me and Eric, and he said the buck weighed 104 pounds dressed. I was like, what? 104 pounds is a fawn in Wisconsin. You know, it's a whole different breed. So your rubs are probably smaller, so that might not be too bad of a deer. But in Wisconsin, if they're below knee height, they're 1.5 years. If they start getting up into here, they're 2.5. If they get up to your waist area, and I'm talking about the center of the rub, the center of the bare spot, because it has to do with their height, you know, the height of the back and how they inline their neck. If it gets above your waist and up in here, it's a mature buck.
So now, what would you say with like these two here? Because this one is drawn all the way up and broke that.
Well,
and then that tore up at the top as well.
Well, that they can bend.
Okay.
A young buck could do that.
Yep.
So you don't know if he's bending that tree over to do that. But one thing, I mean, those trees are kind of small in diameter, but say the one he's holding, I don't care how high that is, it's snapped in half, something that big. It takes a neck to do that, right? It takes some muscle. It takes a big buck to do it. So you're gonna kind of, you know, use common sense. You know, look at how high the tines are hitting when he's raising his head. You know, are they hitting 6 feet up, or are they coming up to here? You know. Anything else?
Do you notice in Wisconsin, really anywhere, like specific type of trees?
Yes, we do have preferences.
Because I've heard before, and I'm seeing it here right now, that like, at least in this region, they love beech trees.
Yes, and they love beech trees in Wisconsin too.
Okay.
But you'll have deer that have certain preferences too. It's actually been proven by biologists that dark racks come from sappy trees. So what happens is all racks are white. The racks turn dark because sap makes dirt and stuff stick to them. You know, and that colors the antlers. So if it's a real dark rack, you can say he's probably, you know, in the cedar or the pine. You know, if it's a real white rack, it's probably in the hardwood. There's one spot where I hunted where there's this one mature buck I was hunting, and there was a buck rubbing all these black walnut trees. There's black walnut trees rubbed all over the place.
when I killed that buck, another black walnut ever got rubbed here. It was that buck.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. For whatever reason, he must have liked the smell or something. But another thing I want to point out too. Oh, look at the rub down there. But if a buck's coming to this point and he's rubbing right here, you know, if you find a rub up on the top of the hill, it could be because there's an oak tree there. It could be because there's a food source or whatever, right? But if you ain't got no acorns here, which you do actually have some, but if you got no sign of anything here, and the trail kind of dead ends into a spot like this, why the hell would a deer want to walk here? If there's a rub line coming out of this, it's because he's bedding here. So what I'm doing when I'm looking for rubs on that perimeter is looking for rub lines and stuff coming out of potential bedding when I'm hunting, right? Not necessarily just random in the woods. But if they're coming out of bedding, why else is that deer in there? You know, if there's a reason, okay. But if it bottoms out of the cliff or something, I mean, obviously he's doing something there, right? Which is probably bedding. So it's, you know, another thing, you're using that common sense to, why would a deer, when he could walk up this ridge and get to an easier spot to cross, why would he come right here, right here with this deadfall here and stuff? Because he's probably bedding here, right? There's a lot of oak struck, and there's not over here. So a good chance it's deer's going over there, maybe dropping down to that heavy trail we were on, turning, going over there, and that would be my guess. This is a little harder of a scenario to figure out. But there is some sign here that's probably worthy of a sit, maybe, right? Obviously, we jumped the bucks, there's something in here.
How often does a deer have to be on a bed to, or how much to leave hair?
Well, you can do that every time, you know. You can find here, if they bed there once, you might not.
That's kind of what I was asking, yeah.
Yeah.
So they can bed there short term.
Yeah, you know, there's different time frames when you leave a lot of hair too. When it starts warming up in the spring, you'll find beds that are just completely covered with hair. You'll think the deer died. It's just they're shedding their old coat and taking on a new one, you know?
Yeah, I know, like, I found a lot of beds with hair in it, and then put a camera on that bed, and I never, like, months go by, nothing ever lays down in it. And it always just baffled me on why I'm finding one with hair in it, and there's a camera on it, and nothing ever comes in and lays down in it.
You might see your camera too. A lot of times when we did the cameras on beds, we'd get the first picture of the deer staring at the camera like this, and then you wouldn't get him again for 3 months, and then he'd be staring at it again, but maybe he'd lay down, maybe he wouldn't. You know, that's the problem with cameras. A lot of guys want to find sign, throw a camera in there, and come back later, and that's a hunt. You bump that buck. These mature bucks are pretty delicate. Like this guy probably ain't gonna bed here now, but he's gonna be around here somewhere. Now you know he exists. Like I always got this thing, if I can get my eyes on him, I can kill him. You know, and that maybe ain't necessarily true, but I believe it. And if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be able to do it every now and then, right? So, you know, if I see something I want, and he's in an area, he ain't gonna show up 5 miles from here. People got that idea, you bust him out of an area, he's gone. The older they get, the more tight their areas get, and he'll pull up around here. It's just if you bumped him here, he might be down there, and he might be over there. What I do find is, out of all the deer I've shot over the years, the ones that I hunted for years, I've never had a bad interaction with a deer at a bedding area and ever seen him there again. It's like if you bump him out of a bedding area bad, like from a tree, he sees you, you shoot at him and miss or something, I've never had one come back, even if he lived there. Other deer will, but not that particular buck. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but I've never seen it. I have walked in and bumped them out, and they come back. But I haven't had a really bad experience with them there and had them come back. We were scouting on the top third elevation around the edge of the thermal hub. And we found this bedding area in the thick area. We jumped the buck out of there, and we found several beds, and we determined that that buck could be floating around and they're all over the place, and there's probably a lot of beds in there that he shifts from. The hill's more rounded, the beds weren't locked in a position, so he would just float around and bed in there. And we came to a point where the thick ended, it got a little open, and we got a certain distance from that bedding, and we looked for a place to set up if we were going to hunt it. Area over here that we determined is the bedding area. Now I know we're not determining an exact bed, but we know bucks are bedding in there, right? So if you notice, we broke out of that thick cover, what, about 50 yards back or so? This is approximately where I'd set up on this side. If I was going to set up on the other side, I'd probably set up where those rubs were. You know, where we looked and it really wasn't a good bed or whatever, but there's that good trail coming out of there. That was kind of coming out of that thick cover too. And I'd give this 2 hunts. I'd give one over here and one over there. Now this main trail coming out here would be a little tricky because it's possible they could see it, but if you're quiet, I don't think they would. If you could come from the top here without really blasting them with your wind, like come around from a ways. And remember, it might be a pain in the ass to get over here going way around them, but you know, you can kind of just bust back out if they didn't show up, right? But you can give that a hunt first because that's going to do the least damage to the area. Hunt that side, let your wind go over. You don't see nothing. Next day, come and go way around, come down here, maybe come into this draw, and I'd try to get below this. One of these trees down here, probably close to this draw, because the draw will always put them, you know, the older bucks will try to come up to the tip and find a way around the draw, just like you would. You're walking up on it, you're going to kind of ease around it, right? This one ain't so steep, so maybe they'll just run right through it. But just in most place scenario. But I want to get below them because number one, the wind's blowing that way, right? Number two, the thermals is going to go that way. As soon as it gets dark, the thermal's going to drop right down that valley. It's going to follow this little ditch like a creek. If you think about thermals, they're like water. In the evening or in the early morning when it's cool, your scent will drop with the cooler air down to ground level, and it'll follow the terrain. So it'll like flow to the creek and down. And that's not exact. But when you use milkweed, you'll see that. You'll see your thermal just kind of drop, follow these ditches down and stuff in the cooler air. Now, I had a couple scenarios here where I didn't get the thermals like I do back home as consistent, maybe because your air is warmer here. I mean, it was still pretty much hot out when I got out of the tree yesterday. Maybe not to you guys, but northern it was, you know. But for the most part, the thermals are gonna, no matter where you're at, when it starts cooling, it's gonna go downhill. So I'd like to be below them, you know what I mean? And then when I come down there, one scenario I like is to pick my tree from up there before I cross the trail and make sure I cross the trail where I can shoot. So if a deer gets to that gets to that trail or whatever, stops or whatever, I can shoot him right there. You know, that he doesn't smell and run off. Or I can shoot him before he gets to that trail from either direction. You know, I don't want to walk in a way that the deer comes in and smells me when he's still quartering to me or something. Or come down, you know, like here and then hunt over there, because he's going to cross your scent trail and he's going to react to it. Now, there's going to be a couple of you guys in there thinking in your heads, I had that happen, deer didn't react. Yeah, but you probably had it happen in Iraq too. Mm-hmm. You know, so you got to take every scenario for the worst case scenario and cover all your bases so you don't, so that you have more percentages work out than not, right? So you cover your bases as if every deer is super paranoid and come down right where you can shoot them, you know? So you can shoot him on either side or shoot him where he crosses, right? You get down on one of these trees down here and hunt him. Like maybe that real tall one there, but that's kind of bare. I'm sure you can find something in there, I would. I'm not really scared of bare trees like that either. I'll face the stand directly at the incoming deer. And when he's coming, I'll stand up. In that tree, I would turn like this, and I'd get in line with the tree. As long as you're not sticking out from the tree. You wouldn't want to be facing down or up, because then you're a silhouette, and then he's just going to spot you. But if you're in line, you just sit there like this until you have a shot. And just underneath you, he's not going to look up. He's going to be looking terrain now. It's from a distance he's going to be looking up. You know, he's looking, just like us. If we were looking down there and there's a guy in a tree, you'd see him. But if there's a guy in a tree right there, you wouldn't see him. You'd have to look up and see him.
So how high are you talking? Like, because if do you want to set up super high so that when they're coming up, it's not a problem, or do you not need to be that high? Or you want to be real high in case they're coming up this way?
I'd be as high as possible.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're shooting uphill like this. Mm-hmm. You're almost parallel, right? So if you're 3 sticks up, you'd be at eye level. I'd be as high as I could get in a tree like that. I might have more of a tendency to take that tree down there, that skinnier silverish tree, because it's got some cover. That'd probably be a better tree. But the whole trick would be to slip in there without busting anything. And this is about the range I'd be. This is about the distance I would be in most scenarios in woods. That deer might be in the middle of that cover. But what I find is when they're in that cover, like it's a bedding area, they move pretty rapidly to the edge of it. You know what I mean? So it's almost like you're
just hunting to the edge. And that cover was not that far off. But he could be anywhere in there based on what we just saw.
Is there any benefit to using more of an offset across his path and then J hook back?
What do you mean, go down further?
Yeah, go that way further.
Yeah, there is a benefit to
And then
that.
come back.
But there is this scenario that you can get random bucks that come in the wrong way. There could be a area down there. So I try to make it,
Especially rut time.
where it does come in surprisingly. More often than not, that's not the case. More often than not, when I shoot a buck,
You
it
just
comes
want to cross
exactly
that
where I
trail right
expect
where
it
you
to.
can shoot.
But it's not always the
Both
case.
ways.
Every now and then you can just get lucky, right? And I try to keep that luck back.
Exactly.
Have the same thing in this one.
Especially
Exactly,
if it gets to be
exactly.
rut. Because then they might just come cruising through here as well as bed over there. And there might be does that bed in there, so the bucks are going to cruise this ridge to check that bedding from the bedding that's somewhere back there. So they'll just run this ridge line. And a lot of these thermal hubs and stuff, rut activity up here is probably really good. They probably run through here quite a bit, following both sides, checking on all the does that bed around here. They'll be searching for them. It's not like every hunt I do is the first time I ever hunted a spot. I mean, most of the time you're hunting a spot you've been there before, at least back home. You know what I mean? But every time I kill a big buck, it's usually on a play or a move or, you know, I'm gonna go try this area out here. It's like you find some niche that's keeping them alive. And I hate to say it because we're kind of looking at terrain features and how to hunt an area, but most of the time the really big ones come from something that just doesn't look like this. It's something off to the side. It's similar, but for whatever reason it escapes everybody's. Maybe it's a small, short drainage that doesn't match all the rest, that's right up against the road, and everybody walks past it on a trail that pulls them back or something. I mean, that's kind of what me and Eric had yesterday. We had a drainage that was right up against the road. You can see how the deer were pinched through it. There's a good fresh rub line coming out of it. And a kid comes up to us, shows us a picture of this giant buck and says, you know, this buck is the buck I'm hunting back here. You know, I'm on this ridge over here. I got pictures of him. This other guy's hunting here. He's got pictures over here. He's got pictures over there. I said, is that your camera over by behind the rubs 100 yards? No, I said other guys. And I'm like, well, they're hunting everywhere. Where aren't they hunting? Well, there's a really good bedding area right next to the road everybody's walking past. And I'm sure that that's where that buck was, but those guys put so much pressure in there, they pushed him out. You know? And that's what you kind of got to do. You got to kind of use your mind to think, how many people are in here? You know, where are guys going? Because it's your pressure and their pressure that bump these deer out of these places. So you got to find that niche where they found some spot where nobody's going. Those big bucks just bounce from spot to spot where people don't go. And they know where everybody's been because they can smell them. Once you've been walked through there, they know it. So if you think, where is nobody dropping scent? And then find the features of land that you need, that's going to kill the biggest bucks.
Now you guys all have to figure each other out.
Yeah, that's what happened in my area. I mean, I used to do all the islands and stuff worked out. Now everybody's like, well, Infall says hunt the islands. And you go out there, you got to get them, you got to pull check numbers, you know. The islands and stuff by the swamp on my house.
How often are you calling? Like when you set up on that tree over there, because there's some beds over there, you haven't seen nothing. Are you calling just regularly, trying to?
The only calling I do personally is I will grunt call the deer that I see, and he's not coming to me. Otherwise, I don't call.
You don't do any kind of attempt to lure or nothing.
I can tell you, I've called that deer. Some deer get up and run. Some deer avoid you, and some deer come running in. I mean, if I think I'm set up correctly, why the hell would I ever want to risk you're spooking them out of here? Right. The last thing I want to do with a mature deer is give him any indication anything is different than normal. I want him to come out in the pattern he normally comes out on and catch him by complete and utter surprise. I've had deer that I've seen go past me. I'm like, I can call that buck, and I grunt to him and watched him look in my direction, look for the doe, and then swing a wide circle, go downwind of me, blow, and then run out of there. Because they're going to smell to see. They don't see nothing. Yeah. They want to know if it's a trap, right? And I could have probably just went down and hunted him where he was the next day and killed him.
So what point are you deciding that you see one and you decide I'm going to make some sound to pull him a little closer?
A lot of times if I'm in a situation where I don't think he's going to circle around behind me, I'm up against an obstacle. If I see one, I probably will try and call him. But I've had that blown up in my face a few times.
It's a Hail Mary last ditch effort is what it is.
Right.
I call it a desperation move. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's like, that deer is not coming over by me unless I do something. And I'll call it. And I have killed a lot of deer with grunt calls. But even a grunt call doesn't even work that far. It's if you just sit there blowing tunes, there's nothing hearing it usually. I have noticed, like, you'll have a deer going by at like 70 yards, you grunt, they don't even look at you. If you take that grunt call and you just blow it really hard, you'll get them shock and look at you, and then you grunt normal, and then they come in. It's weird. But they're not hearing you all the time either. But I think if you grunt it every 15 or 20 minutes and there is one close enough to hear you, you've educated him. He ain't coming, you know, because you've been doing that during the day. There's a time period when they're going to come in, you know. So if you were going to blind grunt to one that's in a bedding area or something, like one scenario I could see where people would want to do it is if you're on a borderline and those deer aren't coming to your side. And you're like, those deer are living in that area over there and they're not coming over. Then I could see calling them and trying to bring them in. But I would not call the whole time I'm in the tree stand. I'd probably wait till prime time. When we got down to the bottom of the thermal hub and came up in to where everything met, where the draws all met, once again, where we always find it on a good hub, there was a big scrape. And you could see where historically all the deer came down and met at that scrape. There's historical rubs coming from all different directions. There wasn't a lot of fresh rubs. And that could have been for two reasons. Number one, it might have been a little bit early for the big rubs to start appearing. And number two, there was a camera watching the scrape from a hunter. That hunter had a good location there. But who knows when he set it. If he set it recently, that would hold the deer off a little bit. But obviously it was getting a lot of use. So I would assume that he had the camera there for a while. But sooner or later that would pick up and they'd forget about that camera. It was a good spot. And it was interesting that we didn't get very far from there. And one of the military guys looked at his phone and said, "Oh, you're blowing up all over the internet, Dan." The guy with the camera had posted the picture.
This is Blaine.
How y'all doing?
What do you do for the military?
I'm a medic working at HRC right now. I'm human resources, putting people on assignment and sending them to their next duty assignments.
Me and Blaine are going in to hunt this ridge here. We're at least going to look at it. This is a really long ridge. We're back quite a ways, so we're going to have to race to the car when we get out of here. But just some good looking stuff on here. We're going to see what we can find. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
I dropped Blaine off on this ridge point here. He's going to climb up that tree there. There's a lot of sign in here. Beds and a good rub over there. And it's right behind a building where nobody really look. It's kind of overlooked. But there's a lot of sign here. And there's some dropping white acorns. So hopefully he can get some action.
Blaine was a new bow hunter, just starting out. He really wanted to be involved in this event, and he borrowed a bow, borrowed a stand to be part of this, to learn about bow hunting and to get involved. And the event had an archery pro there, and he helped him set up the bow to work for him, but he really needed new equipment. I took him out and I put him on that point, and I really thought he'd get a deer. I mean, there was a lot of sign there, but he didn't see a thing. But that's hunting. There weren't very many deer killed on this trip. Out of all these people, one person got a small antlerless deer, and that was it. There wasn't a lot of movement, but he had fun. He enjoyed himself, and when we got back to camp, there was a big, whoever got the biggest buck was going to get a tree stand, and nobody got a buck. So it was kind of unanimously we decided that Blaine should have the tree stand because he needed it. He, out of everybody there, needed one.
The struggles with hunting, especially when you're starting out, is where do I start with? Like, where do I begin? Where does this all begin? And throughout this whole time, there's one individual at this camp that I know of that, without having a bow, which I'm pretty sure is on loan at the current moment, had nothing else to start with. So we chose to give the tree stand away to that individual. So Blaine, if you can come up here and collect the on the box. I mean, there's.
Lift it up a little bit.
My buddy Uncle Lou, he appreciates you guys too. He owns Stealth Outdoors. He has this silencing cloth you put on any of your equipment, like your pole rest, your tree stands. I put them on my sticks so the buffers don't flank or stand. You know, but there's stuff in here for everybody. So, BHA, you want to grab a roll of this and get yourself, he's got some stickers and stuff in here too, but just help yourselves. Make sure everybody gets a roll of this.
Thank you. I just want to point out, Dan, you're a great help, but whoever sent this told us not to listen to anything you say.
Sounds just like something Lou would say.
Then it came time to give away the Prime bow. And by the way, thanks Prime and G5 for your support in this event. And wouldn't you know, the person who won the Prime bow really needed it.
So that was my backup bow last year. So I always have two bows because I have a tendency to drop them out of tree stands, launch them, run over trucks and stuff. And they're stuck on a hump without a bow, you know. So Prime's been real good to me. But that bow's only been fired about maybe 50 times. And just in a practice scenario, I never actually took that bow on until last year's bow. So it's basically brand new.
Better than brand new. That's what I can.
Yeah, I would have loved to bring you guys some piece gear, and I'm planning on it. We're really low on inventory right now. Otherwise, I would have been real cool.
That's the ticket.
All right, guys, like I said, red dot, I had to look at the other ones to see if they're targeted. That's awesome.
That's incredible, huh?
You walk out of this camp with everything you need.
Here you go. Congrats. Yeah, we deserve it. Yeah. You need it, right? You'll know.
Alright. So in orderly fashion, right, like the Army loves to do in the military, we have one more gift we have to present. And I tried to say that everyone was going to try and get out of here with something, and it should pan out in some way, right? So Dan, you can come up with this. So whenever someone moves, whenever someone leaves an organization, the brotherhood, the family, the sisterhood, we always like to send them away with a party gift to remind them of their event and their time with us. Within the Army, we all come close, we all grow close, and we grow as a family, and Dan, you are part of that family now. So for any moment in your future, if you ever come down to Kentucky, just know that you have a group of people that you can reach out to, and we'll have dinner with you, we'll go out home with you, whatever you need, we're there for you, but we also want to send you home with a reminder of that.
So in Kentucky fashion, we got you a barrel lid engraved. BHA 54 KNOX Club, thanks for your support and dedication to America's warriors past and present. Now you might be asking yourself, why is there a big empty space? Well, we've got a fellow who's going to make a skull hooker, but with the Kentucky, state of Kentucky outline out of metal, that you can mount here, and then when you come back to Kentucky and shoot a buck, you'll be able to hang your buck on your barrel lid.
All right.
And also, on the back, so you don't forget any of us, we've all said a few nice things, well, mostly nice, and signed it, and then you can do what you would like with this. This is in thanks for what you did for us.
Thanks
from all of us. There's always more in the Army. So, are you familiar with the tradition of coining in the military? All right. This goes back a long ways. A little bit prior to World War II, regiments would strike their own coins, their own medallions, as a way of identifying members of the regiment. If you only got one when you were a full member of the regiment, meaning you had to have done something, you didn't just show up and you had to be part of the regiment. Usually meant you had to be in combat or engaged or something, or doing something. And you carried the coin around, and then when you were at the bar, when people took their coin out and slapped it on the bar, made that sound. Don't, if you didn't have one, you had a bottle. And so in the military, we have extended that tradition. And coining is a way to recognize somebody for hard work, things well done, without the rigmarole and administration of an actual award, you know, those on your uniform. And so the Secretary of Defense has coins all the way down to little old people like me. And so on behalf of myself and my Sergeant Major, in our capacity as a senior officer and NCO, for what you've done for the soldiers and airmen and Marines, past and present, we want to award you with the 84 Training Command G357 coin. Strike hard / bottle opener, which does in fact work. Thank you.
You know, as much as you guys seem to have appreciated me, I appreciate you. You know, all you've done. And I know I've said that, but I really mean it, and that's why I'm here. And you know, you guys all got a place in my heart. You know, I tried to make sure I talked with each of you, and I got a little bit of each of your stories. And really, what touched me the most was really your lives and what you've done for this country, more than the hunting. The hunting is just what brings us together. And you know, hunting is just such a great outlet. And I'm so glad you guys put this together for these guys so they got, you know, something good to do to get their minds off of everything else. I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
We are part of the broader Backcountry Hunters and Anglers organization, which is turned 20 years old this year, started out west. Actually included 2 Army officers in the original group of sitting around a campfire. The Backcountry Hunters and Anglers nationwide conservation organization focused on getting folks out there, getting them engaged with their legislature. Throughout their existence, they've always had an opportunity for you to identify as either current or former military service. Being a great organization like they are, you know, they would cut you a little bit of break on your membership. And that's how they identified it. At some point about 5 or 6 years ago, somebody noticed that there was a statistically significant number of BHA members that identified as either current or former military. And somebody said, hey, what we should do is we should have a program inside BHA that works to get after these current and former military members. Let's give them another opportunity to serve. Let's give them the chance to get engaged in the conservation fight. These are folks who want to get out there and do things, right? They want to get their hands dirty, both literally, you know, pulling fences and doing conservation work, and figuratively. Right? They'll write letters, they'll talk to people. So they created the Armed Forces Initiative program inside the BHA organization 5 years ago or so. And it's exploded ever since then. So BHA has chapters all over the country and one in Canada, and AFI has programs and clubs, which is what we are here at Fort Knox, at installations, Army installations, Navy, Air Force, all over the United States. Some are bigger than others because of populations. So about a year ago, actually in January, I and my former Sergeant Major, who we hunted together, decided, you know, there isn't a rod and gun club or anywhere where hunters and fishers and conservation folks can kind of get together and hang out and talk here on Fort Knox. And it's especially difficult for new folks that show up here. In the military, we show up, we're here maybe 18 months, 24 months, and then you're on to the next place. And as you well know, it's challenging to get to a place, have a very limited window of time.
Find that out.
Right? Yeah, you are. So he and I have both been what we call magazine members of BHA and AFI. I mean, we just we get the monthly or quarterly magazine, read it, check the website. So I started doing some research. I reached out to AFI. I said, hey, I want to start a club here at Fort Knox. They were super enthusiastic about it. And I didn't really know what to do, how you do these sorts of things, and the coordinator at the time just said, just go do stuff. Right? People will come, just go do stuff. So we did. We had a pint night in January where we invited the Fort Knox environmental folks, the game wardens to come and talk, kind of give us a recap of deer season 2023 and talk about the organization. We built a core group, the folks that you met here today, Brian and Eric, and Stephanie, and we just started doing things. And then we had an opportunity to have a bit of a captive audience here in the summer. Cadet summer training occurs here. We bring every ROTC organization in the entire country sends their junior cadets here for evaluation. Well, their cadre come as well, and they're stuck here. They don't have anything to do. So we got the BHA full draw film tour to come out, and we raised some money. We got some things going. That led to some more interest, right? And so then we decided to try and put this whitetail camp together. And so the AFI clubs that are inside the AFI program, which is inside the BHA, just kind of continually narrow the focus down to that local population of retirees, veterans, folks who have served but didn't fully retire from the military for whatever reason, and currently serving active duty, reserve, National Guard forces. And we want to do a couple of things. One, with the AFI program, a base kind of idea, give them another mission, right? Give especially those veterans and retirees another mission, and that is getting engaged in conservation. Then here at the local level, we want to get those veterans and retirees out of the house, maybe back into a little organization, group of people that understands them, that they can feel free to talk with, and just get them outside in the woods. We know there are studies after study after study from a variety of disciplines that talk about the health benefits, both mental and physical, being outside.
I would say that, hunting saved you.
Hunting saved you?
You look at where everybody else that I grew up with ended up. And I ended up the way I did because I stayed away from trouble and immersed myself in the woods. And, as you're saying this, I'm thinking about these veterans and these active duty people and the conversations I had over the last couple of days with them. And some of the things those people have been through, they need an escape.
Yeah.
They need a place like I had,
right,
to go. And hunting is that for me, and I think it's great what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we cannot thank you enough for coming out here. The time that you took to come out here prior to the event so you could get the lay of the land and get a little understanding, right? Because you're from Wisconsin, Kentucky's a little bit different. Yeah, it is deciduous hardwood forest, but it's warmer here, seasons change a little bit differently, some different species. And I will tell you, ever since your class the other morning, we called it Academics with Dan. People have been talking about what they learned. And there was a fella I was talking to last night after dinner, and he was talking about how he is so upset with himself because he has been hunting Fort Knox wrong for 2 years, right? Because right after the academics, you guys went scouting, right? You walked the ground to show on the ground what they had seen in the map. And so then everybody took off and went and did an evening sit. And he went out and sure enough, he put into practice some of the things you talked about, both the map recons and what to look for on the ground, and then also your trick with
the milkweed.
The milkweed.
Yeah.
And he said, sure enough, he climbed up in this tree, and sure enough, deer came. He's in the right spot, sort of. And he had checked the wind with the milkweed, and no kidding. That doe came along, and as soon as she got to where that milkweed had gone, Yep. So, there's one guy, and there's several other stories. I could take up all the room on your DVD card there, your memory. But there's one guy right there, right? From the time you spent with us, you have changed the way he will hunt for the rest of his life, right? So,
You know, I came to this because I really support the vets and the people that serve this country. It's something I don't want to do, and I don't have to because of you guys, literally. And but I appreciate greatly what you guys do. And, this is really a fun event. It's a way for me to be part of you guys and stuff, and just every person here kind of touched me too. So it's not just me teaching you guys; you're teaching me too. I mean, you're I feel good about this. I think it was a good thing. I really like what you're doing.
thank you. Well,
And you know, is there anything people can do to help?
yeah, absolutely. First of all, to the veterans or currently serving some folks out there, if you're interested in hunting, fishing, general conservation, if you did it before and haven't, it's fallen off. That happens in the military. You're moving around every year, 13 months, 15 months, 18 months, deploying. You can't go out and do stuff, but you want to get back into it. Get on that website. You can use your Google Foo and check out BHA AFI. And there are events just like this happening, especially in the fall, all over the place. There are chapters literally from coast to coast. There's one near you you can get engaged with. You don't have to be a part of the leadership. You can just come out and do things. So for you folks and your veterans, whether you're a retiree or served for 2 years, 4 years, whatever it was, and you're looking for just some social interaction with folks that kind of understand what you've been through, reach out to us, reach out to the emails you find online, and come hang out, come be a part. If you just want to support, you can certainly make donations. You know, we're a nonprofit organization, so donations in kind. We've got some great sponsors, Gastronome sending us some food to eat out here. I got to give a huge shout out to the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association, Chapter 1-2, right here in Radcliffe, Kentucky. They supported the vast majority of those wonderful burritos and things that we've been eating and the dinners we've been having. Any of that kind of support. And we don't just need money. We don't just need stuff. We need folks that want to come out and folks like Dan. You know, obviously Dan's a hunter, he's a professional, he's got a lot to teach us. But we'd love to have anybody from the community come out and talk about conservation. If you are working in the county in the environmental office and you want to talk about predation problems, especially out west, or here in the east, you want to talk about the decline of the oak forest, we'd love to have you come out, talk to a meeting, drink a cup of coffee with you. Really, we're open to just about anything from just about anybody that wants to be part of either a conservation conversation, and that's a pretty broad topic, hunting or fishing, and then certainly anybody that just wants to be engaged with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Space Force, Coast Guard, whoever, and just help out their fellow countrymen, one way or the other.
I really appreciate everything you're doing.
Thanks, Dan.
On all points, and especially your military background and what all these people have done to sacrifice that are here. Really appreciative.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for inviting me. I feel honored that you guys wanted me here.
Oh, absolutely. And let me also say that we wouldn't be here, this generation of military members wouldn't be here without generations past, right? Family members that we may have had that served in other conflicts. Obviously the greatest generation, we talk a lot about them, but there were generations that came after them. Korea, Vietnam, certainly Desert Storm, and especially that Korea, Vietnam generation. We get a lot of support, right? We get people that want to donate stuff for us to these things. That generation didn't get treated that way. And it's because the American public have recognized that that wasn't the right way to treat our brothers and sisters in arms, that we get what we get. So really, this generation of military owes that generation of military a tremendous debt of gratitude from inside our own organization, besides the fact that they served and we are benefiting from
what they did to secure our freedoms. So, to anybody out there that has family like that, our hats off to them.
And I just want to reach out and say thank you to everybody that has served in the military, any branch, whatever. Can't show enough appreciation for, you know, what you guys have done for us civilians as a nation. You know, I probably wouldn't be sitting where I am right now if it wasn't for our military. Today we had a little giveaway for some of the military guys, and it kind of, it was pretty touching. One guy in particular is a brand new hunter, and he won a stand and he won a bow. So, you know, start from scratch. He didn't have any of that stuff, and now he's got everything he needs to go out and hunt, which is just, I don't know, like I said, it was pretty touching. Definitely felt that one right in the chest. You know, he had talked about some of his experiences in the military, and it's like, geez, it doesn't even come close to, you know, payback for guys like that. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to those guys and, you know, say I appreciate everything you guys have done for this country. So
I'm sitting in a tree when I get down. If I don't kill anything, I'm heading home. And I probably won't. I spent most of my time really concentrating on the service members, both the veterans and the current service members. I really appreciate everything those guys do and have done for my country, for me, for my family, for our freedom. So I came here for them. But it's hard not to sit in a tree in the evening, right? So I'll tell you what I learned about Kentucky and Fort Knox. This area and this base gets a crap ton of pressure. There's cameras everywhere. Everything that looks good has a camera, has a hunter. There's a lot of guys pound this area. It has some big bucks, but it has them because it has areas you can't hunt. Nobody can go into. Nobody can scout, hunt, or anything else. And those deer just run in there to grow old. To me, the only way you can really hunt this effectively is get lucky in the rut when they come running out of those areas, or to figure out the little niches that all this pressure is missing. And at this time of the year, that's all I have. I have to figure out these niches.